I was worried for a minute
Hapana. Hiyo.
Tukue tumeanda deliver.
Hapana.
Then hata hii tunamaliza hivyo hivyo.
Hata hii najua itaenda vizuri.
Godspeed. Imeenda kweli? I'm refreshing. Yes, now the link is up. Sawa. Okay.
So we begin in 10, 9,
That's okay.
8,
Very
7, 6, 5, 4.
Good afternoon, good morning. Asante sana for watching this episode from wherever you're watching us from, depending on your time zones. Karibuni sana. Hapa ni Kenya Bureau of Standards. This is Ask Kebs. My name is Dennis. It's such a pleasure to have you today. It's such a pleasure that you've made time kuchukua simu yako, kuchukua TV yako, kutune in kwa hii episode ya Ask Kebs kutoka hapa Kenya Bureau of Standards. Jina langu ni Dennis na kukaribisha sana na asanteni sana. Hii ni Ask Kebs. It always comes to you to tell you more about Kenya Bureau of Standards, to tell you more about what we do, how Kenya Bureau of Standards is always on the front line to safeguard consumer safety, to ensure that we are doing standardization, we are doing conformity assessment, and we are also doing metrology services to you as a Kenyan and also to the East African community at large. This is what we do here at Kenya Bureau of Standards. So Ask Kebs is here to make sure that all your questions, anything you would want to know about Kenya Bureau of Standards is answered. We've had different episodes before. We've talked about our procurement processes. We've talked about our National Quality Institute where we do training. We've talked about our quality assurance where we certify products and how that happens. We've talked about even our certification body and even our metrology services. We've had different conversations, and today is not a very, very different day. It's also a day where we are going to talk about a very unique service at Kenya Bureau of Standards. Probably one of the most important elements of our organization that goes unspoken, and some people don't even get to hear about it a lot. Today, we are talking about internal audits. And when you hear the word audits, I want you to not panic. Hatuko hapa kufanya ile audit ya kuangalia mambo mingi. We want to know exactly what exactly when we say internal audits do we mean, and how does that happen at Kenya Bureau of Standards. So to help us break that down, to help us understand why do we need internal audits, why are they important to an organization? You probably have a company, you have an organization, you want to know exactly what internal audit would or how it would help your organization. Today is the day. And remember, if you have any questions, use the hashtag #AskKebs. Pale Facebook, pale YouTube, pale X, that is pale watu wanaita Twitter. Use the hashtag #AskKebs. We'll be here to answer your questions. We'll answer them as they come. So thank you so much for tuning in. I told you about internal audits, and the expert is in the house. The expert who is going to let us know more about internal audits. And thank you so much for joining us today, sir.
Welcome.
Asante.
Thank you for hosting me.
So tell us, what is your name and what do you do at Kenya Bureau of Standards?
Okay, thank you. Thank you once again, Dennis, and I appreciate this chance. So my name is Eric Gate Kirubi. I'm the Chief Manager, Internal Audit at the Kenya Bureau of Standards.
So Chief Manager, Internal Audits. What do you do at Kenya Bureau of Standards? What exactly is that? Why do we have internal audits? I thought audits are done by people outside Kebs.
No? Okay. Okay. We have, first I can say that we have two types of audit. We have internal audit and external audit. Both of which are supposed to be independent. When I mean independent is that we are objective in what we do. But the main difference is that internal audit is, we work in the institution that we serve. But now the external audit, this one they report, they don't work in the institution, but they report to the share.
Others outside the organization,
Yes.
And the others will report to the management of the organization.
Yes.
And that's where you come in.
That's where we come in, now as the internal audit.
Mhm.
Yes.
So take us through this journey of internal audits from your process, and what exactly does it entail?
Okay, maybe first to bring to attention why we need an internal audit.
Mhm.
People altogether, so that you find the shareholders are different from the board, and the board is actually different from the management.
Mhm.
So how audit now comes in? We even may start with the internal audit. The board now is not involved in the day-to-day running of the institution, and so they also charge. They have what we call the fiduciary responsibilities, and now for them to fulfill
Umeanza kutupeleka mbio na najua watu wanataka umesema
fiduciary responsibility.
What is that?
For example, the board see the issues of the policies, they approve the policies of the institution, but they are not there to see, to implement. These ones are implemented by management, so they delegate like management. So what I would say is that now the board, because they are not in the day-to-day running of the institution, but they are still responsible on what is happening in the institution, like those issues of accountability, corporate governance. They need an eye in the institution, so that ourselves as internal audit, we are the eyes of the board, so that we are going to provide assurance to the board that the institution is being managed in the way that, according to the policies that they approved, the policy statement that they make and such. Then when you look at that is now internal audit. So that's where we report to the board. And also, not to say that, we also report also to management, because we are adding a value. But also, when now we come to the external auditors, now these ones now are like employed by the shareholders of the institution. The shareholders employ the board employ the management. So the board has someone who now is like their third eye in the institution over management.
That is the internal.
The internal. Now the shareholders, now they have the board. They employ the board, such that now the shareholders also need some assurance that the institution is being managed in the way it is supposed to be. That now comes the external audit.
So the eye of the shareholders is the external.
The external audit. And that's why you find in like a public institution now, like Kebs.
Yes.
No, there's a public institution, so the shareholders is the Kenyan public. So that's why now our report, the report for the Office of the Auditor General, who are the external auditors, who give assurance to the shareholders.
Yes.
They report to the Parliament, who are representative of the shareholders.
The people.
Now, the people. Now for internal audit, we report now to the board.
That makes sense. Sijui kama umeelewa hiyo. Kuna external na kuna internal. External wana deal na shareholders. In this context, Kebs is a public institution, and the body that is external in this case is the Office of the Auditor General.
Yes.
And they report to the Parliament.
Who are representatives of the
people.
Public, yes.
And now internal audit is now for your case, you represent, or you are the eye of the board. Somebody has already asked a question here. Yes. When you say internal and external, are you auditing money? What are you auditing? Because there's audits that we hear with money. Is it the same audits, or it's different?
Okay, first I would want to say that every activity in the institution, they are usually summarized in form of they have some financial implication.
True.
But I would say for audit, we don't only audit money. We mainly audit the processes, especially for the internal audit. If you look at our internal audit plan, or the kind of audits that we undertake, you find that we audit maybe finance, maybe 3 or twice in a year. But you may find that we are auditing a lot of processes, because as internal audit now, we should pay more focus on the core activities of the institution. An institution like Kebs, there are issues of methodology. We audit methodology, the processes, the standards. We audit in the entire, all the processes.
So when you speak processes, and you've actually given us quite an insightful aspect that in finance, for example, the department, you might do audits twice.
Yes.
But when you go to where the processes are, the key processes of this organization, you're there even more frequent. So it's not really money you're following, but process.
Yeah, because it's a process improvement. Maybe if you look at the internal audit, the way it is defined,
Yes.
we say that internal audit is, it provides independent and objective assurance. And this assurance is to senior management and the board on the governance, risk management, and control processes. So when you talk of governance, you see it's wide.
Yeah.
The issue of governance, they are very wide.
Yeah.
Risk management is also wide,
Yes.
because you find that every department, like in an institution like Kebs,
Yes.
is faced by different risks, which are now consolidated to form the corporate risk.
So for example, I'm just imagining when you say processes, a customer who wants to apply for a standardization mark, that's a process.
Yes.
So you will audit if that customer is getting the process the way they should get it.
Yeah. Actually, now when you're looking at that process,
Yes.
you look at it, is it serving the customer? Just as you have put it, is it serving the customer the way it is designed to, it is supposed to serve? And when you're looking at those processes, you look at a number of things. First, then when you look at the way it is designed,
Yes.
we now go to the third question: is it working effectively as it is supposed to be? So we first ask, is it there? No, you are ticking. It
Yes.
says either there or no. Now we cannot go to the next stage of
If it is not there.
if it is not there.
Yeah,
So if it
true.
is there,
Yes.
we ask ourselves, is it properly designed to achieve the objectives? So it may be there, but you look at maybe there are area for improvement. So if it is properly designed, is it implemented? Is it enforced the way it is supposed to work so that it achieve the objectives?
Okay, so I heard you mention something to do with an audit plan. So it means you don't just wake up and randomly meet a department and say, today we are here to audit you.
No.
How does it work?
We have an audit plan, and that planning is a process by itself, because we are guided by global internal audit standards. The world. They are also adopted by the Kenyan government through the Public Financial Management Act. So this is what guides us. And they have they cover the entire internal audit function, from planning to how we do the audits and even how we report. So this planning, we usually do what we call risk-based planning, because again, it may not be possible to audit each and every area of Kebs. So we do a risk mapping, a risk assessment, then we prioritize. Based on the processes, based on the risk, we prioritize. Then we are able to audit the high risk areas and maybe the medium risk areas based on the resources. But mainly we cover the high risk areas. So what usually happens, for us to come up with that risk assessment, first we look at the risk register, the corporate risk register of Kebs. So the risks are rated there, the high risk, the low risk. So then we also look at the previous audits, because you have audited.
Yes.
Based on the previous audits, it can inform you the area, the risk, of the risk level of an area, depending on, based on the issues that we had raised previously. Then we also, which is very important, we also consult management as we are planning. And we ask them to give us areas that they feel should be included in our internal audit plan.
I'm interested to understand, when you say this risk, why the word risk? What exactly do you mean when you say the risk areas, high risks, low risk? High risk ni nini? And who comes up? How do we know there is a risk somewhere? Because I would imagine then a risk it sounds like something in the insurance world.
Okay.
What is this risk?
Okay. I would say, all our life is risk. Even getting here at work in the morning, or even going home, we are taking a risk. Because you are going to cross the road, or it's a risk. But so in every thing that we do,
Yes.
there is a risk. Now, in the business world, or in the
Yes.
corporate world right now in Kebs,
Uh-huh.
we have the strategic objectives. So that is where we want to be. But now, we also have things that can deter us or that can make us not achieve those strategic objectives. And those are what we are calling now the risks. You see the way you'd say now you are closing the road, you might,
So the possibility of you getting to the other side,
yes.
There's a chance unaweza gongwa. So all those are risks.
Those are risks.
So in business, it's the same.
It's the same. You have the end in mind.
Yes.
But now how to get there, the road to get there, there are many things that will happen, and those are the risks. And you have to, to identify them before you even start the journey, so that if I encounter this, how do I go about it?
So in your audit, then you're mostly interested to understand how do we deal with this risk, or what exactly do you do with this risk? Because when you say you have looked at a process and said high risk, low risk, so what exactly then how does that then inform your decision when it comes to what to audit?
Okay, when it comes to what to audit, because the objective is the same, because like now we are in Kebs, we are looking at the strategic objective. So we are asking ourselves, what is likely to impact on this strategy that we may not achieve what we are intending to achieve. So as internal audit, because again, as I mentioned, is a value-adding service, so that we are able to advise. It is both advisory and also to provide assurance that we are moving in the right direction. And if there are areas or issues where we need maybe to change tact, or we need to maybe to some risks that are not well managed, we give recommendations. So I would say it is risk-based, because also we don't want to audit every other aspect. We only want to audit those that are contributing to the key objective of the institution.
So that's how it works.
That is how it works.
So in your day-to-day, you're literally looking for risks and trying to know what to do with them.
Not really, but we are looking at we have that plan that we do at the beginning of every year, which is risk-based. But it is also subject to change, so that the risks are also evolve. They are dynamic. So 1 year is quite long for risks. They change. A risk that was high at the beginning of the year may be low by the end of the year. So in the day-to-day, what we look at now are this assessment that we did at the beginning of the year. Because once we do that assessment, now we list the areas that we are going to audit. That is in the plan. And then we allocate the time, so that we say, if there's a certain department or a certain process, we audit this in July. Our year now starts in July.
Yes.
So July, we have all those areas that we are going to audit. August, September, every quarter or every month, we have the areas that we'll be focusing on in auditing. That's what I'm saying now. Sometimes you find that the risks may keep changing. Maybe there's an area that we had not factored in.
Yes.
Then it emerges and becomes a high-risk area that may call for amendment of our plan.
I'm curious to understand from then your perspective. It means you're experts in almost everything, because Kebs is so many organizations in one, or many processes in one. How does your department then end up being an auditor in, say, quality assurance? Yet probably there is nobody in your department who is a quality assurance expert, or how is your team composed?
Okay, I would say one, internal audit is, as a profession,
Yes.
is like good skill. We may not have the technical skills,
yes,
but there's a way. The training that we get is that you are able to, to provide insights once you understand the business process. Because all these are processes. Some of them may be technical, but there's a process on how we go about this. So the first thing that as an auditor you need to know before you undertake the audit.
Yes.
There's something we call now you understand the business. You need to understand the business. Understand if it is the metro, how do they do? What are their mandates? What do they do? What is the process? So we go through a training. There are various training, because you find that you have like systems auditors. There's a training for systems audit. There's a training for projects audit. Maybe the financial audit. But we have a certification for internal auditor, certified internal auditor. which equips you now with skills to understand the business processes so that you are able to offer insights.
So it's not any person who can become an internal audit. There is a certification involved.
There's a certification involved, but again, you find that in most, some of the technical areas,
Yes.
it's also advisable that you can have technical people in the department. Another way of ensuring we have that is also capacity building, internal audit. You know, they may not have to be the technical expert, but to understand, the way I'm saying, knowledge of the business.
Yes.
You know, they understand the business. So we usually have a program called like guest auditors, which you can use. You take an auditor, they go to a certain department which is technical in nature. If they work there for 3-4 months as a guest auditor, by the time they are coming back to internal audit, they understand the process, and now we are able to understand that process to know how we are going to offer services and improve the value. Because again, what the standard requires of us, our internal audit standards, is that we have a collection of skills, so that we have auditors who are good in data analysis, others in some technical areas, others in financial audit. Because the audit always we work as a team, in teams. We find that in any particular area, there are 3 auditors or maybe at least 2 auditors. So these 2 auditors, they are selected using a criteria, because we know this area will require some data analysis, some technical skills, and maybe some financial, literacy skills. So we have auditors who are now, who are collectively, they possess all those skills.
So that's how the team is composed, and that's then how you and your department then will determine who goes to audit where.
Yes, exactly.
It's quite an interesting field, if I would say, because I would imagine today you just looking at Kebs, there's metrology, as you've mentioned, there is quality assurance, there is inspections, there is procurement, all those processes. That means your department has to go and audit that.
Yes.
And you're doing this because as an organization, we're actually supposed to be doing this.
We are supposed to be doing this. So what we are doing is we are providing assurance that as an institution, what we are supposed to be doing, for example, in procurement, in metrology, we are doing that towards now achieving the set objectives.
That's amazing. And knowing that your department is quite critical, because when you started mentioning the word risks, and you gave us a very interesting analogy of when you want to cross the roads and you need to understand the risks. I'm just trying to understand or imagine other organizations out there, and people who are watching this episode would be probably interested to know, as organization, do they necessarily need to have these internal audit departments, or why exactly you as an internal auditor, what exactly would you tell somebody who's trying to think towards that direction of internal audit?
Okay.
For the organization or for anything they want to come up with?
Okay. What I would say is that internal audit is both, I would say, one is the best practice, and it's also, a statutory requirement in some industries. Like why I say it's a best practice, if you have your small business, which may not be, is your own personal business, you have some controls. Maybe you have some structures, processes, how you want the records to be maintained and such. And maybe you are not the one who is running that business. You have entrusted someone else. Just as I say, the board may entrust the management to run the business. So you may need some assurance that whoever you entrusted with the business is doing the right thing. Even when it is not a statutory requirement, you still feel you need that assurance. And that's where now the issue of audit services comes in, because provide assurance. Then I would say, so that is the best practice part. Then it's also like in Kenya now, is a requirement that every public institution should have an internal audit function.
It is a requirement?
That is a statutory requirement. Then you may find, even in the private sector, those industries, the banking industry, the capital, those that are in the capital, the stock exchange, these are some statutory requirements. So that there is that assurance to the shareholders
and the board or the
Yeah.
management.
Yes.
That's amazing. That's internal quality, inaitwa internal audit as a
They-
department.
to
as a-
provide assurance.
to provide assurance. And it's interesting. We're just about to take a very brief break, but once we come back, I want us to come back and talk about the internal quality awareness. Is it quality month?
Audit awareness
Audit
month.
awareness
Internal audit,
month.
International Internal Audit Awareness Month.
Ni hii mwezi?
And him was
It is
May.
in May.
Yes.
We're coming back to talk more about that episode. Also, I'll just want to leave you with a very interesting process. He talked about processes, and I want to show you a process that Kenya Bureau of Standards does that is at our inspection offices all the way from Garissa. So tune into this video. We'll be back right after this.
I work at Kenya Bureau of Standard, Wajir Outer Station as an officer in charge. I was employed at Kebs in 2008, and I was taken to Mombasa, Kilindini, port office. And by then I was an inspection clerk, and I worked as an inspection clerk at the different CFSs. And from there I was taken to the main office at Ambalal, testing department as again sample control officer, and now I'm based at Wajir Outer Station as a officer in charge. And my day-to-day activities include visiting supermarkets, grocery shops, and bakeries. We normally just do some spot check visits and then give them some education on handling of those products. Doing inspection in porous borders is challenging, but we, the officers of Kenya Bureau of Standard, are trained fully to overcome those challenges, and we do the inspection as required. As a Kenya Bureau of Standard officer, my passion is to protect the life of the public by making sure I stand in between the substandard goods and the consumer. My work is to protect. And Kebs has equipped me with knowledge and skills and to work efficiently. And also, I've gained a lot of experience through working with multi-agency team. My name is Faisal Farah, and I am proudly Kebs.
And we are back. That was Faisal Farah all the way from our Garissa office. He does inspections. Yeah, it's a process. I don't know if you audit inspections. Do you?
Yeah, we do. We audit.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
So
They
what
are
are-
our main client.
Your main
How
client.
are they implementing them? How are they designed? And how they implement those procedures.
Amazing. So nilikuwa nataka utuambie kuhusu hii mwezi. Hii mwezi nimesikia ni muhimu sana. Internal inaitwa
International
Eh?
Internal Audit Awareness Month.
International Internal Audit Awareness Month.
Yes.
What about it?
Okay, it's a very critical moment for internal audit. Every year, in the month of May, we celebrate it as the Internal Audit Awareness Month. And in this month, we are supposed to to engage with our stakeholders, create awareness,
Yeah.
what we do, what is the role of internal audit, what is the value. Then we also engage with the stakeholders so that they can tell us whether are they getting the value, what can we do to maybe improve the service. So that kind of engagement with the stakeholder. And also use the same month to demystify some of the misconceptions about internal audit.
Kama gani?
People may say that these are policemen,
Ehe.
they are, they are fault finders, they are Those many things that
I was
maybe-
actually going there.
So we need to demystify that so that it is also seen the way I said, internal audit is a value-adding service. Yes.
So in organizations, for example, Kebs being an internal audit department, how do you deal with the internal, the staff within the organization? Because there is that misconception that you've just said that anytime staff are told there is an audit or a department is told they're about to be audited, what exactly do you first of all call people and tell them we are here, we are not the police? Ama huwa mnafanya aje?
Okay. One, we have a process, and also we also sensitize people. But in every audit assignment, so that we also it is usually very interactive, such that every assignment to go through 4 stages. We plan, we go now to the field, the second stage, the third stage, we do the report writing. Then we do also a follow-up. So in every of those stages, it's very involving. So like, for example, you had like, as we are coming with the annual work plan, we invite management comments so that they give us areas that they would want us to incorporate in the annual work plan. So that is the first point of engagement. Then as we are planning now for the individual audit, because this annual work plan has all the audits that you are going to undertake. Now, if you go to an area like inspection, as we are planning the audit, we also engage the management of that area to understand their processes. We usually have what we call an entry meeting, where we share the expectations between audit and the auditees. We call them audit clients, the audit and the audit client, so that we tell them what are we expecting, why are we here, what is the scope of our work. It's not a surprise. We don't create that surprise environment. Why are we here? What is our objective? The objective of this audit. What is the scope of this audit? Which areas are we going to cover? And even the timings. Then so we agree with that. Then we go to the field work, when now we are executing the assignment. It's also an interactive process. So that as we come up with maybe findings, and we call them areas for improvement, we communicate. It's not that we are waiting to surprise you at the end of the audit and tell you that these are now the fault in your area. So we highlight them as we come across, so that we also get your feedback. How can we address these? Because the main objective is to add value, and any area of improvement that we come across, our main objective is that it will be addressed at the end of the day. Not the issue is not how many issues maybe we are going to report to the board, and we'll be happy to report and say we went to this area. These are the areas of improvement we came across. By the time we finished the audit, they were all addressed. So is that value-adding aspect? Is a message we try to communicate every now and then. And I think this month is also a good opportunity, so that we are able now to communicate it as we are not, when we are not auditing. You know, the other times we communicate as we are auditing. We tell people we are here, we remind them that we are not fault finders, we are here to add value, there's the areas we are going to check. But now, here we are now communicating it without necessarily going to the audit, so that we create that awareness.
Amazing. And probably you would tell us then, what exactly then are you looking for if it's not faults? And probably when you're giving us these outcomes,
whether the process is, your process is working, whether the process is working as it is expected to work. If there are deviations, maybe the process is not working as it is supposed to work, those are the areas for improvement. And those are exceptions, because we don't expect, they are not expected. Because when you have a process and you have procedures, they are supposed to work.
So you call them deviations?
Those, or exceptions, those, the gaps, the gaps that we come across.
Identified. What about the word non-conformity? Because I believe people who have undergone audits before, kama umewahi kuwa kwa audit, kama hii, whether it's internal or external, you have heard of this word non-conformity. Ni nini hiyo? What exactly is it?
Okay, I would say, although the word non-conformity, mainly, you see, there's that procedure that you are supposed to be maybe following, what you are supposed to be doing, processes, but maybe there's a deviation. You are not doing what is supposed to be done. So that is a non-conformity. those are now the gaps, what we would call the areas for
Improvement. So the good language is areas of
Areas of
improvement.
improvement, and we
Okay.
give a recommendation for that,
And-
which we are also willing to work with the management.
Mhm.
And we usually say these recommendations are suggestions. It's not that once we give you a recommendation, you struggle with, maybe you find it is not working. You know, you are the owner of the process.
Yeah.
And you know better which can work for you and which cannot work. So we like giving what we call practical recommendations. That's why it is very important after every audit, when we raise those issues, those gaps,
Yeah.
it is very important we discuss with management or the owner of the process so that we can agree whatever we are suggesting, is it practical or do you have a better way of doing it? Because the main aim is to address
Yes.
the issue that we came across.
So the whole idea is to improve the process.
Yeah.
You're not there to be a policeman. Ukitoka hapo umeandika report, umesema nilikuta wanafanyanga, and now everyone out there they will use a very common word, wanasema ndio hao masnitch, wamekuja kusnitch, and now they are about to go and report us to the board that we are not performing. So I've seen a question here, somebody asking, how do you deal with managers who probably will not implement this? Is it in your process to go and implement, or probably if you have given recommendations for them to do something? What exactly do you do? Do you recommend further drastic measures? How does it work?
Okay, how it works? Okay, first once we make a recommendation, it is the responsibility of the manager, the process owner, to implement. But as I mentioned, if there are difficulties, we are ready to come in and understand what is the issue that we are facing in implementing these recommendations, and how can we address it. So we do what we call a follow-up audit. And this follow-up audit is to monitor the implementation of the previous recommendations. So if we find that you are not implementing recommendations as we had agreed, first of all, we need to find out why.
Why?
We understand from your perspective, why are you not implementing? Are there difficulties? What are the issues? Are there issues beyond your control? So that we also get to understand it from your perspective. And that now informs the next course of action. As I mentioned, we are guided by a standard. What the standard says and what it requires us to do, the profession, is that where management accepts risk. Because in that case, if we find that these are issues within your control and you have deliberately not implemented the recommendation, we conclude that you have accepted the risk.
It is now part of you.
Yes.
Umeikubali.
Yeah, umekubali. It's part of you. But again, this risk, the risk in an organization, the risk management is guided by what we call the risk management framework, which defines risk tolerance levels or a risk appetite.
How much are you willing to accept?
How much are you willing to accept as Kebs? So now, if we find that you have accepted a risk that is beyond the risk appetite of Kebs, our profession requires that and that's the requirement, that we escalate this now to the management, to the board.
The board now.
Yes.
So this is.
I'd actually be penalized if I came to do a follow-up.
Yes.
And I find that there are risks that have been accepted that are beyond the risk appetite.
Yes.
And ikazikanyagia siku. We need to escalate now to the board so that there are policy decisions. Are we those decisions is are we willing now to maybe adjust
our risk
appetite upward so that we accept this?
Yes.
Or is it that something needs to be done so that these risks are reduced to the acceptable level?
How during your line of work, and I'm now interested just to know, during your line of work, you've probably dealt with different clients, different departments, and have you ever come across a difficult auditee or an audit client? How do you deal?
Okay, I would say, within Kebs, I think we are okay.
Yeah.
Because everywhere you go, there's understanding of the audit. I think it's because of the many audits that are done here. There are the BSI audits.
Yes.
You have the systems audit. So people generally understand what is audit, and it is there to add value. But also, we have, even in our procedures, how you deal with if you come across, because you know, you say there's a risk.
Yeah.
A risk is a likelihood that something might happen. If it has not happened, maybe even if it has not happened, if in the unlikely event that you come across a difficult client, there's a way we provide that you handle. And mainly, what we require, or what the profession requires, is that first you need to also know what we call the empathy. You also put yourself in the shoes of the auditee, so that you can be in the same level and see why are we having this disagreement. Is it my point of view, or labda where he is or she is? He's saying 6, but from your side you are seeing 9. You need to agree. So that you need to find out whether is it because there is a maybe that different view. Because all these issues, they need to be solved amicably. Because as I said, once we give recommendations, we are not the one to implement. They are implemented by management. So if you don't agree, that tells you that even that recommendation, it may be difficult to implement. And since we are all interested parties, we are also willing, also our intention is that those recommendations are implemented, or if there is any other way the issue is addressed. So that's why we have to amicably deal with these issues. Agree. If you find that your view is okay, you need to persuade the client, so that you see things from the same level. But if you find that maybe the client, the way they are viewing this issue is also acceptable, now, because they are the process owner, you also, you also buy that if it is going to address the issue that we raised. Because the main issue here is that we manage the risks.
Amazing. Wow. I don't know if mnafuata, sijui kama mnaelewa kwamba Kenya Bureau of Standards has a fully fledged internal audit department that is actually operating within the realms of the law as expected by the Constitution and the Public Finance Management Act. Yes, that requires all public institutions to have an internal audit department. For ours here, it's headed by the Chief Manager, Internal Audit Department, Mr. Eric. Thank you so much. It's quite amazing kujua kwamba hizi processes zote, the things that as process drivers and process owners you do every day, that there's somebody else who's there not to be a police. They're not there to police you. They're not there to snitch on you. They're not there to report you to management or the board, but they're there to make sure that how you perform that process, how you execute it, improves over time. Because there is no other way than to improve. I don't think there is any organization or institution that has been established and is looking to walk backwards. They are all looking to walk mbele and know that there are risks. So sijui kama mmeelewa kuna kitu inaitwa risk appetite, na si ya chakula, ni risk appetite. Unajua kwamba how if for example, I'm happy you have used this example. You want to cross the road, you must know unaweza gongwa na gari, pikipiki, baiskeli, unaweza anguka. Hizo zote ni risk. But the end goal ni kuvuka pande ile ingine. How you deal with this risk is now where you come in. As internal audit, you're there to look at how do I manage as a person. Mimi mwenye ninavuka barabara, wewe umeniangalia, unataka kuona ninafanya vipi nisianguke, nisigongwe.
And you can now advise that this is the way you can improve here, because you are the risk owner. But now, as we are here to give assurance that the way you are managing, the way unavuka hiyo barabara, you are going to make it to the end.
That's amazing.
When we find that the way you unavuka, you may not make it, then we
unaniambia ngojea kidogo, usivuke kwanza, slow down, hapa kuna gari inakimbia. That is internal audit. It's quite an amazing department. If anything, I think almost all organizations, hata wewe mwenye uko na kampuni yenye unatengeneza bidhaa ambazo tumecertify na ziko na S-mark, you need to also ask yourself, how well are you managing your risks, and how well are you dealing with those eventualities that you have no idea would exist? Have you even identified them? Do you even know what would go wrong? Because I think it goes back to the first thing, identifying the risk. Because if you don't identify your risks, itakuwa ni ngumu sana hata kuzimitigate. So you also encourage people to identify their risks?
Actually, that is the starting point. First, the starting point in this risk management process, you have your strategic objectives. So you start with the objectives. Then from the objectives, now you identify the risks that may affect those objectives.
Uh-huh.
Yes.
That's amazing. Now, I've seen a question somebody has asked here. I want to become an internal auditor like you. What do I need to do? Nafaa nianze wapi?
Okay. First, I would say internal audit. They are both qualifications, you know, the professional qualifications,
Yeah.
and also the personality also, because you know, you must be somebody who is willing to assist other people to improve. Then how you go about it? First, as I mentioned, we have a certification for internal auditors. It's offered by the Institute of Internal Auditors. But the first requirement is that you must have a degree for you to qualify for that certification. But mainly what we usually do, that is for internal audit, but we also do the certified, we have the Certified Public Accountants of Kenya, CPA. Although that one mainly is now for external audit, but it's also good for internal audit. It's very key because, again, you know, most of the issues, as I said, all these transactions and processes in an institution, they lead to the financial, they have a financial impact. So eventually, you still need to audit the finance. So you need to have the CPA, then the CIA is advisable that you have it if you are to be an internal auditor. Then there are many other professions like because, as I said, audit is skilled. You are covering all. You can imagine now, like in Kebs, there are so many. You know, the automation, the level of automation. We need to audit that platform. So there's also a qualification there for certified information systems auditor. So in internal audit, you can specialize. You can become a systems auditor, maybe the financial auditor, the process, you know, auditing the processes. But those are the main qualifications. The CIA, CPA, and these additional qualifications like the CISA now, the information systems auditor.
Wow. Amazing. It's quite interesting. I've also seen somebody asking about what's your relationship between you being the internal audit and the external auditor for this organization, Kebs. Do you ever work together, or do you both work in different points and never meet? How does it work?
Okay, we work together. Actually, for the external audit, when they come to audit, the first point of call is internal audit, so that they get to see our work, what we have been doing. In our standard, because we are guided by a standard, there's a standard that talks about coordination and reliance with other assurance providers' work. So as that we are supposed to coordinate our work with one of the external auditors, which we do, so that we avoid duplication and also leaving out areas that are of interest. So the reason why now the external auditors, when they come, they request for our reports. They look at the areas we have covered. If they assess and find that we have substantively covered a certain area, they may not need to duplicate resources and do the same audit. But now they can focus on areas where they find that we may not have covered or we may not have substantively covered. They may also focus on other areas where they find that we have substantively covered, but maybe the management action to address the issues we raised is wanting. Maybe the issues have not been addressed to the satisfaction. They may want to see what are the challenges in implement. So they may focus on such areas. So we have a lot of, you know, a close relationship, and we rely on each other's work quite a lot.
Wow, that's amazing. And I've seen Thomas here go. Thank you so much for watching this episode, Thomas. Thank you for making time to even ask questions. Thomas is asking, how do you detect and deal with managers who resist findings and recommendations by auditors and view it as a threat or criticism?
Well, one thing I would say is internal audit is fact-based. The findings are fact-based. You know, if I'm telling you the table is white, even you want to deny it, you can see the color is white. So that is the call now to internal auditors, that we have to make sure that our findings are factual, so that we also don't create that room for argument. And also the engagement, the interaction. When we are doing the audit, from the beginning, from the planning to the time we are raising the issues to reporting, there is that interaction. And we are showing, you know, also that attitude. What I was saying, that now as we interact, we are also portraying that attitude that we are here to add value. We are not auditing the personalities or the person, but the process. It's only that these processes now are run by people. So if there's an issue in a certain process, you may find yourself in that. But we mainly we are focusing on the process. We don't personalize the audit. So we are able to handle such cases because again, you see, it is not about the person, it's about the process.
So when you're coming to audit, sio mtu umekuja kuaudit.
Sio mtu.
Umekuja kuaudit process.
The process, yes.
So probably ukiona auditor amekwambia ama ametuma audit notification, actually you didn't tell us about the entire process. How from the point of view deciding we are going to audit, just probably run us through the entire audit process from A to Z.
Okay.
How does it look like?
Okay, I would say the entire audit, we have 4 stages. The first stage is planning. This is where we have first to identify the objectives. Why do we want to do this audit? Once we identify the objectives, what is the scope that we require to cover? That's still the planning. We identify the objectives, the scope. The scope is to achieve these objectives, what do we need to cover? If it is the process, we need to look at processes for which period. Is it the last 1 year, the last 6 months? That is the scope. And which processes are we going to look at? Once we look at the scope, we now come up with the resources. Which resources will be required to achieve these objectives? Maybe we may need a data analytic tool. We need 3 auditors. You know, when we talk about resources, include even the personnel. So that is when now we also now do preliminary review. It's something we call a preliminary review. It's understanding the process. You look at the policies, the procedures. That time you are still now planning. You look at the procedures, you understand them. You look at the systems, the people who are running that process. You understand that process. Then that is when now we said an audit. We prepare something we call an audit program. So that because we have understood what are the objectives of this process. Now, what do we need to check to see whether to achieve our internal audit objective? So after we prepare the program, that's when now we call for an interim meeting. And in this meeting, this is where now we share all this that we have been doing in the planning, the objectives, the scope, even the resources. That's when we introduce the audit team that will be undertaking that assignment. If there's any assistance we require from the management of that area, we request for those resources. So we share expectations. And we also ask the audit client, are there any areas, because we have given you the scope and our objectives, are there any areas that you feel we have left out? So we also give you a chance to tell us which areas you may want us to also to cover. Then remember I mentioned that when we are planning now for the annual plan, we request management for their input. So in this exit to adequately cover those areas that we told us to audit. So it's an very, that communication is very key. So processes, review the document. So that is now the fieldwork, the next stage, areas for improvement. Then the third stage is the reporting, which is now we document the work that we have done. Are there gaps? And we also acknowledge, I would want to maybe mention this, that we also acknowledge positive performance. We don't only report on what is not working, but where we find that something is exemplary, we also have it.
So mkikuta tukifanya vizuri mtasema?
Tutasema. Tutasema. We tell you to keep up.
So
that is now in the reporting. And in the reporting, that's where we have now even an exit meeting. In this exit meeting, the purpose is to highlight the issues we come across in the fieldwork. We tell you this is what you observed, just to confirm the accuracy, is to give the auditee a chance to confirm the accuracy, so that you're able to tell us now, maybe this one, maybe there was an issue of clarification, it is clarified, so that the final report does not have so many issues that could have been clarified during this other engagement. And at that point is where we also discuss the recommendations. Are they practical? Are they practical in your processes? So that is the process up to reporting. Now, after that report, we issue the report, which we require you to give us management responses, how you are going to address those issues, specific responses, how you are going to close those gaps, and timelines. And you see, remember these things you have been discussing all
Yeah.
through, even in the exit meeting. So they were agreed. So what you are documenting now in your management response is what we agreed in the exit meeting. Yes, and this is the report now that we finalize, a quarterly report. We consolidate all the reports for the audits we have done within the quarter.
Yeah.
We do a quarterly report which goes to the senior management and now to the board, because we report to the audit and risk committee. This is the report that we table to the audit and risk committee.
Wow.
Yeah. Then after that, now there is a follow-up, because we come back to check how you are implementing what we agreed.
That's amazing.
Yes.
It's quite amazing to know that all this happens and people probably have never had a chance to understand this. And because this is the month that we are actually spreading the international internal audit awareness.
Month, yeah.
This is the month of that aspect. So I hope now tumejua, I hope tumeelewa. This is Ask Kebs, and it's been quite a very interesting episode. Thank you so much, Mr. Eric, for gracing this episode and making sure that tumeelewa internal audits. Sasa hata nikisikia audit anakuja sitashtuka, sitaona ni kama wamekuja kunitafutia makosa ndio labda wanitafutia reason kukuwa na issues na management. So thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you. I also appreciate this opportunity.
Yeah.
Yes.
Asante sana.
Thank you.
So that is Ask Kebs. Its episode always comes to you to let you more about Kenya Bureau of Standards. My name is Dennis. It's been such a pleasure. Asante sana kwa kuona na kufuatilia huu maneno ambayo tumekuwa tukizungumzia hapa ndani ya Ask Kebs. The hashtag will and shall always remain to be Ask Kebs. My name is Dennis. That was all the time we had for today. Thank you so much for watching. Have a good night. Ama evening, ama morning, kulingana na mahali uko kwa time zone.